Game 3, and it looks like Haggler is big game on this board. You can haggle Minion and so many nice things. Fortress, Shanty Town, Menagerie, even Crossroads will be useful at some point here. Also, you can haggle Nobles into Minion, which is excellent, and then you can haggle Province into whatever you want, really. There's tons of nice things to haggle here. Haggler is big game, and I was considering how to open Haggle while my opponent just straight opened with Haggler. So that's one way to do it. I have to go an alternative route here. So seeing my opponent open Haggler made me think that I had to play a little bit of catch up from the beginning. Haggler Crossroads is an excellent opening on this board. I knew I wanted a silver, and the question was between a second silver or a Shanty Town. I opted for the Shanty Town to try to cycle a bit more quickly to catch up a bit from that opening Haggler. So my opponent gets a Shanty Town, and on 3 here, I know that I have enough money for Haggler on my next turn. So instead of picking up a silver, I pick up a second Shanty Town here. Shanty Town can draw me some cards, can somewhat defend against minion attacks, maybe, I'm not sure. My opponent gets a minion with Haggler in play and a fortress along with it. The fortress I'm not sure about, but it's whatever. It's not bad. Rogue, you're less likely to attack your opponent with rogue if there's fortress around. Here my opponent discards with minion here and picks up a menagerie. I found that a bit strange this early in the game, but Menagerie is okay nevertheless. With Haggler and 5 coin here, it is a minion for me, and what I'm thinking about here, I obviously want the minion, is what to haggle with it. Should it be another Shantytown? I have 2 already. Is 3 too much? Menagerie I don't think is worth it at this point. Crossroads not so much. So then is it Fortress? I don't want the silver, obviously. I have more than enough money, especially with this minion just bought here. So I go back and forth between Shantytown and Fortress for a while and eventually decide on the Fortress. I don't really know if it was good or bad. Here my opponent picks up a second minion and gets a Menagerie with it. No, sorry, a Fortress with it. Here, a couple of Shantytowns trigger, so that's excellent for me, and I'm able to buy a nobles haggling a minion. That is exactly what I want to do on this board, especially in the early game. The earlier I am able to do that, the better it'll be for me. My opponent discards my hand here with minion. The menagerie didn't activate there, and they just pick up a Shantytown on 3 coin here. I play my fortress, and instead of discarding with this minion, I decide to take the 2 coins. I have quite a bit of money, and instead of going for a nobles or a minion at this point, I opt for a second Haggler. Like I said, Haggler is big game on this board, so I'm hoping to get 2 Hagglers in play, maybe get nobles and 2 minions with it, something like that going. With all these plus actions in my deck, I'm not worried about drawing the Haggler dead either. So here my opponent picks up a minion and another fortress. Here I opt to take the coins from minion here and draw with the Shantytown instead of playing the Shantytown and discarding with the minion, because I knew that Haggler was in the back somewhere there. So I pick up another nobles and a minion via the Haggler. Here my opponent plays Menagerie and it activates here. So that's quite good for my opponent. I've been attacked and left with this hand, which isn't bad. My previous hand was good too. So my opponent is having quite a good turn here, getting a lot of the action cards done. Shantytown's triggering, and with 7 here, they opt for a second Haggler. So see, also going down the route of the second Haggler here. Maybe at this point my opponent is a bit more prepared to pick up that second Haggler than I am. I draw this Haggler dead, which is unhappy. At this point in the game, given that my opponent opened with Haggler, I think I've achieved parity, or close to it anyway, so I'm not too displeased with my position, especially after seeing this $4 hand from my opponent, where they pick up just a fortress. Here I'm obviously going to discard with this minion, and again here going to discard looking for my Haggler really. Another discard here, I find my Haggler and a Nobles. So unfortunately I can't really do anything with this Nobles, but I can get the Haggler in play. I was hoping again for 6 here, but alas, I only end up with 4, not even 5. So I have to think about what to do here. It'll be a fortress presumably, but what should I haggle? I choose Crossroads at this point because I have some Nobles in my deck, and Crossroads and Nobles have that synergy. My opponent plays a Menagerie and it activates again. So my opponent's Menagerie is starting to put in quite a bit of work. Here my opponent does not attack me with the minion, instead stops to get 5 to pick up another minion. I believe the minions are split 4-4 right now, I'm not entirely sure. So here I forcibly activate the Shanty Towns, discard with this minion. It was a bit risky because I had $6 there. I could have gone Noble's minion, but I tried to cycle a bit and thinking that I would still be able to get to 6. Unfortunately, I have to settle with 5 and pick up a Shanty Town with my minion. So that wasn't so good for me. Here my opponent uses their Nobles for draw. Gets a Haggler down, a minion down, and another minion. So another good turn here for my opponent. Menagerie comes out and it activates again. So at this point Menagerie is rarely putting in work and I don't have any. And not only do I have none, I still don't see the work that is put in. I still don't see the value in it. I'm picking up Shanty Towns over Menageries when maybe I should have been doing otherwise. So here my opponent gets Haggler, 2 Hagglers down, sorry, and picks up a Nobles, and haggling the last minion and another Haggler. So my opponent has 3 Hagglers now to my 2. So this is something I want to rectify. I want to have as many gains as my opponent just for pile control. Here I can get this Shanty Town to trigger, and it is what I'm going to do. I have quite a bit of money and can haggle something very nice here. In fact, I draw into the second Haggler, so I get 2 gains. On 15 and 1 buy really is just province and haggling 2 things. It's just to decide what 2 things that I want. I can't get Nobles, that would have been excellent. One of the things is a Haggler. I don't want to have less gains than my opponent, and again here I opt for the Shanty Town instead of the Menagerie, even though my opponent has been showing me that hey, Menagerie is doing work. Here I'm able to only get up to 6. I get a Nobles and another Shanty Town. My opponent had a bad turn before this one, just picking up a Menagerie. This is quite a good hand for me here, but it's gonna get lost. If my opponent had a bad hand last turn, it probably means that this turn is going to be quite good for them. Their deck isn't that bad. Menagerie again drawing cards here. And this minion is taken for draw. And another Haggler comes out. So this is 2 Hagglers, I believe. And province gaining a pair of Menageries. Obviously discarding with this minion here. Opting to discard with the minion here instead of drawing with Shanty Town because I get more cards that way, and I managed to squeak up to province, so I'm able to get a province and a couple cards. So seeing the work now that Menagerie is doing, I decide to get them, but it may be a bit too late. It may have already given my opponent that much more of an advantage. Couple Menageries comes out here for my opponent. Draw with Nobles, and their deck is working very well, very well. 2 Hagglers have come down here. Lots of money through the minions plus the Hagglers. Province, and again a Cartographer here, which is something I didn't look at on the board, but is certainly helpful, especially as we start to green. And if you're picking it up for free effectively through the Haggler, then why not? Here I have to draw with the Crossroads here, triple Shanty Town collision, and not only that, I only end up with 4 here. I was going to buy an estate thinking that it might matter, But then I realized I had the extra noble, so it wouldn't have mattered if we were to go province until the end of the game from here on out. So instead I play out all my coppers, and with 4 I'm just trying to keep track of what my opponent can do. They have 3 gains, so as long as I keep more than 3 things in piles, I won't lose immediately. So I get a fortress and get a menagerie and a crossroads with it. This is an excellent hand, but it gets thrown away by the minion here. My opponent picks up a nobles. I'm only able to pick up a duchy here and haggle a fortress. Sorry, I haggle a menagerie because, like I said, there's only 3 gains my opponent has, so it's safe to get that menagerie. Here my opponent is looking for a minion. I was hoping that they wouldn't find one, but with this cartographer here, seems like they found one and is going to discard this hand. And it also looks like they're going to be able to buy province this turn. Already halfway there with the coins. Haggler comes out, minion for coins, and they're up to 8 province, haggling a couple more cartographers, I believe, at this point. So here I'm going to play the nobles for plus actions because I don't want to draw into another nobles and not be able to play it. So said, so done. So that was lucky, I guess. Here I'm going to discard with the minion because it's more cards that way. I only come up with 6 again, so we get a nobles and a cartographer. Just trying to stay alive for a bit here. Not being able to hit province on that turn was quite bad, especially if my opponent can hit province on this turn, and judging from what we see so far, it looks very good for my opponent. 3 cartographers down, a bit of draw from the 2 nobles, 3rd nobles now, and we see hagglers come out, minions come out, and they're up to 8 very nicely. And presumably we're going to see the same thing like last turn, a province and a couple cartographers. So my opponent opts for Menagerie, Shanty Town, and along with the province. So they're just trying to empty piles, and at this point, my opponent has to have less than $3 for me to have a chance. Here, my menageries kick off, and I see what I've been missing out on. So this game, I thought I equalized in the middle, but then I failed to recognize how good Menagerie was, and that let the game slip away from me a bit. So this big turn here doesn't really mean anything at this point because it's very unlikely that my opponent won't have $3. Here I'm going to discard with this final minion just to attack my opponent in the hopes that they don't have $3 somehow. If they draw all green cards, I don't know. So I have to take this province to have a chance of winning. It's just, what do I haggle with it? I opt for golds, not really thinking. I mean, it didn't matter at this point, I don't think, just for fun. Anyways, my opponent is able to close out the game here, and that is game 3. So here, probably just trying to get to the province at this point, but is unable to do so, so picks up the Shanty Town to close out the game. So that's game 3. Thank you for watching.